Hello, everyone, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian. I'm here with Allison, and this is Maintaining Frame number 51. We're going to do another episode on the epic showdown between male feminists versus female anti-feminists. This time, we're going to be looking at whether or not the statement is for them true or false, which is women should also be drafted into the military. So this should be fun. I knew, by the way, I gave you two to choose from, but I knew you were going to pick this one because the draft has been on your mind, I've noticed.
Yeah, well, the draft is definitely one issue that really, really bothers me.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that the fact that men are responsible for putting their lives on the line whenever society or a social group or a tribe is facing an existential threat never is included in the calculus when it comes to equality or equity or whether or not a society is oppressing men versus women. Okay, it's never included. And you know why it's never included? Because if you include it, you have no case. None whatsoever. It's just gone. Yeah. Like, you have to completely ignore men's sacrifice in war to assert anything in feminism. And no, it doesn't, you can't just be, oh, well, men are sending no, it's not men sending other men. I mean, we have this attitude that our politicians and our leaders enforce things from the top. But the truth is that our habits as people and how we treat each other, how we view each other, what we allow to be done to each other creates the things that politicians and leaders can do. Like that gives them their panel of things, of options that they can do. Once we stop allowing certain things to be done to our neighbors and our sons, the politicians don't have that button anymore to press. Yeah. So these things, war is a habit of every person in a society. And we build the foundation that allows politicians to push the button. We build it. It's our habits that make it. Our expectations of expendability on boys, that they constantly justify their worth and their position in society. And that starts with women. It starts with mothers. It starts with mothers who have a difficulty relating to their sons when they cry or they're angry or they express anything but, I guess, pleasant subservience. Okay? So this is a habit of societies. War is a habit of societies. It's not men sending boys to war, young men to war. It is all of us sending to solve our problems. And if we feel free to take away everything from a man because we want to protect ourselves, then men are not the ones that society, privileges. They aren't, because they'll take every privilege away from men if society feels like it's under threat. So no, this is fundamentally the issue that absolutely blows all feminist rhetoric out of the water, which is why they don't talk about it. Or alternatively, when they do talk about it, they say something like, well, feminists want to get rid of the draft. Well, you're not trying very hard, are you? You managed to get the vote with women's collective will, but you couldn't get the draft. Yeah. And believe me, the draft would be abolished the moment that women are subject to it.
Absolutely.
But regardless, my point is that when they talk about this, they say that they're against the draft as if that allows them to remove the whole issue from consideration when they're talking about oppression of women, which is the real thing. Like, I don't know how to solve this issue. I don't know how to solve, women having the same citizenship rights as men, and yet men are the ones who are expected to sacrifice for those rights. I don't know how to deal with that in a fair way. I mean, maybe you could make the argument that now that we exist in a world of total warfare because of nuclear bombs and high yield, megaton bombs, that women are also part of the front line. And that's an argument you could make. I don't know how to solve it. But the first thing that we need to do is bring that reality back into the equation about the oppression narrative. Yeah. And of course, you won't see it. You won't see it because, again, literally, if society will sacrifice men, everything, in order to protect itself,
Mm-hmm.
Society is not privileging men. Full stop. The end. It doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter who's sending them. It's not privileging them.
Yep.
For the love of God. Anyway, so the first thing we need to do is just let that inform our attitudes about our beliefs about social structures.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to add to that too, when it comes to war and the draft, is that we effectively have two different classes of people. We have men who are subject to the draft, and we have women who are not. And because men are subject to the draft, I think that it actually has a large effect on how they exercise their responsibility to vote. And there's another layer that's added that women don't have. Not to say that women wouldn't vote like in the interest of their sons or father or brothers or whatever, but the point is that their skin is not in the game to the same degree. So if we it basically means a difference between like electing a warmonger that says nice things and panders to women, or electing someone who is going to be tough but isn't going to start a war. And so I think that's an important consideration, is that when men vote, they're looking at what they stand to lose and they're trying to balance these things. But women don't have to do that. I'm not saying they wouldn't, but they don't have to. And that's an important distinction. So
well, to be honest, the women's rights rhetoric has been used by the CIA to sell wars.
Yeah.
I know for sure it sold the Afghan war. I'm pretty sure it probably sold the Iraqi war. Because I remember, when I was a kid, I was a little rabble-rouser. I apologize if I'm sound really slurry. I'm quite tired, but I went to school. It was probably a good thing that I got to go to school that was really conservative. But the school was in Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War. That's when I went to school, before and after as well. And we lived by an American base and a munitions dump, so we were bombed periodically. Well, actually, no, I think it happened every night, but regardless, during the war, I remember writing a letter to, I think it was one of the Bushes. I don't remember which one. And I said, it would have been the first Bush. Okay, I said, why are you using women's rights to bomb Iraq when I live in Saudi Arabia and women have to wear all black head to toe abayas? Oh my God, my teacher hated me for writing that letter. I've always been a contrarian, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid.
A logic gremlin.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. I was the freaking logic gremlin that everyone hated. Well, that doesn't make sense. That isn't logical. That isn't the truth. Oh, fucking shut up! You're ruining our parade. But anyway, so they must have been using the women's rights rhetoric for going into Iraq. And as a young and budding feminist, I had to call them out for that because Saudi Arabia is worse. But I wasn't wrong. That's the thing.
Of course not.
But anyway,
they just don't like that.
Anyway,
that you could have made a point that they hadn't considered, or they really want to preserve their version of reality, their narrative.
Yeah, because it justifies a war. This is what I've noticed, is that all of this rhetoric, all of this woke rhetoric, at the end of the day, justifies war, justifies corporate greed, and justifies government tyranny. And I'm like, what? And then they have the audacity to say that anyone who opposes them is a fascist and they're some kind of anarchists. I don't know what kind of anarchist you are, but I don't recognize you as an anarchist. So, anyway. Okay.
Anyway, so I just wanted to make that point about the vote, because I think that, it's a serious imbalance to political power.
Okay, the point I was making is that they use women's rights to sell. This is what I find really hilarious. Okay, the CIA will be like, they don't care about their women. They hate their women. And then American women, well, you're right. You're right. And the CIA will be like, what they need is to be bombed.
Mm-hmm.
Like all of them. Like we need to be bombing wedding parties. We need to be bombing, churches, mosques. We need to be bombing schoolyards. Let's just go over there and kill a whole bunch of them. That'll solve the issue of women's rights. And American women are like, that makes perfect sense. Yep. And it's so freaking like, and you bring this up and people are like, oh, but it's men's. And no, it isn't. Again, it's habits. It's our habit. And it's American women's, or the Western women. I'm not going to single out American women because we're all bad, but it's Western women's habits that they think that men should die because women have to wear headscarves.
Right. Well, they don't have to pay.
Think about that.
They don't have to risk anything to do that. And on top of that, they assume that men have all the power. So who cares if 10, 20, 30,000 men die overseas? They had privilege anyways, right? So like that attitude.
Who cares if their women died? Who cares if their women died? Because they didn't even have rights. So that it's like putting a dog out of its mercy. Out of its misery. It's a mercy kill, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's so despicable about this. Like, this rhetoric justifies incredible levels of violence. This rhetoric literally is when everybody takes the stops off. Is when they start flinging around they don't care about their own women, like genocide is coming. It's coming down the pike.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're a sexual threat to our women. Genocide or some awful thing is about to start. This rhetoric really needs to be like isolated and examined carefully before it's deployed. But I should tell the people, right, to where to go.
Yeah, let's tell the people the things.
Yes, let's tell you the things. All right. So if you would like to send us a message, and please send us a message so that we know we're not screaming into the abyss, you can do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We will get the full benefit, and you will get the full benefit of avoiding YouTube's very, very strange censorship regime. And you also get a little bit more space to say whatever it is you want to say, which does help us understand, because I've noticed that has there been a lessening in the crypticness of the super chows? Or
they have become a little bit more direct.
Yes.
And straightforward, a little less like Martian.
They're a little less like we've been on the Martian surface in our buggy and taking shelter in a cave and turn the lights on. And, oh, what's that script on the wall? What does it mean? It's a warning. The dread rabbit is in the.
I got a couple super chows, so I should read those before we go ahead. So Anonymous, and I don't know if it's the same person, but an anonymous person gave us 2 super chows, or 2 anonymous people each gave us one for $5 with no message attached, and one for $5 that says your new battle cry, #cunts to the fronts. So thank you. And I've read those, so if you guys want to send some more through, I will take them. Also nice hashtag. And let's take a look at this video. So here we go. This is Male Feminists versus Female Anti-Feminists. What was that?
I wanted to say that, the word cunt?
Yeah.
It's a lot less offensive in Commonwealth countries than I think it is in America. Because it is also a term of endearment, I think.
Sure.
So it's not, okay, keep going.
Well, no, I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, let's go ahead and do this. So the question is, women should also be drafted into the military. Let's see what these people do.
Women should also be drafted into the military.
Let's do it.
If you're gonna vote.
So there you go. You got like 4 people. 3 of the male feminists, and 1 of the female anti-feminists.
Oh, and this is why, like, you gotta be careful, because and you know what? I don't even like the term anti-feminist, because, I I prefer the term non-feminist, and it's because I just simply do not agree or believe the foundational premise of your belief system as a feminist. Yeah, and I don't have to because it is not scientifically proven. In fact, it's sort of the opposite. Every time you've attempted to take patriarchy theory and prove it has some kind of predictive value, you've found the opposite. So it's not science. It's just a belief system. Or as one feminist termed it, a philosophy. Well, thank you. I don't have to ascribe to the tenets of your philosophy or belief system. So I don't. And I don't even, like, when you say anti-feminist, it's like, that's not the only choice. Feminist or anti-feminist, how much is non?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't call myself an anti-Zoroastrian or an I don't know, an anti-Hare Krishna. I just don't believe your shit, and unfortunately, it's everywhere. So I have to be like, I don't think we should make decisions based on this shit in this context.
Yeah.
And then you get declared an anti-feminist. Well, yeah. Well, maybe you should separate feminism from state. Hey,
that would be
maybe
nice.
you should get it. Maybe you should get it out of victim services. Okay.
I mean,
maybe you should get it out of academia.
Yeah, it is religion. In fact, it's a cult. So
okay, and because the difference is a religion is generally life affirming to some degree.
Yeah, it's a cult. It's not a religion. I mean, it is, but I guess it's. Go ahead.
And well, yeah, a cult is not. Cults are usually nihilistic.
Right.
But all right, let's see.
Let's go.
Women should also be drafted into the military.
Let's do it.
If you're gonna vote, you might as well be drafted, baby.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
Yeah. That is
so is this the
based.
one that you thought was based or good?
She seemed okay. Like, I don't remember every perspective, but she wasn't as wooey as the big tall glass of water, and she wasn't as sort of trad Connie as the brunette. But I just take, your takes are good on a case by case basis. This is not a bad take. I think that if you had to confront her with the question, do you think that there should be a draft at all? She would probably say, no, I think preferably there wouldn't be one. It wouldn't be a legal thing. But if it's going to exist and women want to vote, then you may as well be drafted. And I think that's her point, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I believe rights come with responsibilities, and we are all responsible individuals. Granted, I'm glad we live in a society where we haven't had the draft since Vietnam. I think Vietnam.
50 years ago.
I do think that maybe we should relook at the draft and as other options, not just military service. So I was in the active duty military, and I was also in the National Guard, and I fought wildfires. And
I swear.
What?
I swear, Brian, he's fem-maxing somehow.
Yeah, he is. He is. He's telling us all how much he's done, and this somehow makes him qualified to have an opinion on this.
Yeah, no, he's telling us that, but I'm also thinking he's using feminism to maximize something in his life.
Yeah. But here's the thing.
He's working it.
I don't know if they're going to address this, but simply drafting women into the military doesn't necessarily serve the military. I think that women let me put it this way. If women are in combat roles, okay, I don't think that that's going to work out, because I've talked to a couple of guys that are fans of ours that are in the military or were in the military, and they said that when women were in their units and they were doing simulations, training, that kind of thing, the women were distracting, and I don't mean they were sexually distracting. I don't mean that. I mean the men, their natural inclination to prioritize women's safety over their own became a problem because they couldn't function as well as a unit, right? So even if the woman is in there saying, "Look, just treat me like one of the guys. I just want to do my part," all that, men are going to be affected by that, and I think it's going to it's going to hamper their effectiveness overall, and that's not something you can afford to do in the military. If women are not in combat roles, like say they work in communications, or they're like, they're doing other jobs like support. What was that?
Minesweepers.
Yeah, or they're in support roles or something. I guess that's still good. Like, I think that's good, but then they're not really risking as much as the men, are they? I mean, in total.
But at least it's something, right?
Yeah, at least it's something, right?
And to speak to that, it's like, at the very least, we have to recognize that if we're going to control that instinct, and I have talked to people, men in the military too, and apparently it's really strong. Like, and
what?
The reason why I'm mentioning this, the instinct to protect women, is very strong. And the reason why I'm mentioning it is because feminism will simultaneously deride this instinct in like a combat situation, and that as a reason to exclude women from combat, but then ride it, like just ride it when it comes to things like violence against women. Well, okay, but the only reason why people aren't saying, oh, well, violence against women, why is that worse than violence against men? The only reason why we are horrified by violence against women is because we want to protect women. That's it. Otherwise, otherwise, feminists would have started up with the violence against women, and the first person would have looked at them and said, yeah, but there's like 3 times more violence against men. Or there's 6 times more violence against men. So what are you on? What are you on about? What are you even saying? Go away. I mean, look at it. If women became men tomorrow, they'd be 6 times more likely to die violently. So what is this violence against women? Okay, and that comes from this instinct.
Yeah.
To protect women. So don't exploit this instinct in one scenario and then complain that it restricts you in another. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say.
All right. So let's keep going.
I've done crowd control. I've done a lot of other things. If you want the same rights, you have to have the same responsibilities. And I think that's just universal based on what you can do and your abilities.
This was a very difficult one for me to parse through because I remember when I was getting my birth certificate changed and it was like, all right, time to register for selective service. And I was like, oh God, I have to make this decision now.
Actually, I don't think you do. This is a trans man, by the way, in case you guys don't remember from when we did this before. I don't think trans men have to register for the draft, so I don't know why this person's saying that.
No, they don't. They don't.
They
You only people born male have to register at the draft.
Yeah, which means trans women still do. So, parse that out. All right. So anyway, let's keep going.
To register.
You don't have a choice.
I know. So I was like, all right, cool. I will go through with finishing all this legal stuff up and register. And I think, like you said, there's lots of other responsibilities that men and women of different abilities and different strengths could fulfill within selective service if we needed it.
So anyway, those are their thoughts for the draft. It's not much. What?
This is a short one. It's gonna go quick.
Yeah, it is. It is short. All right, let's see
the contrapositional.
Yeah, let's see the contrapoint.
Drafted, correct me if I'm wrong, would be going into war, would be physically going and doing the actual combat.
A lot of the draftees in Vietnam didn't go see combat. They did supportive roles.
Okay.
It's selective service, so you register to be potentially needed to call for multiple different responsibilities.
But some of them are going.
Right, right.
All right, I'm just pausing it there for the banana. I am playing this at slightly faster than normal speed. Again, it's for our protection. It's only at 1.25 speed, so it's not like crazy fast, but this is just so that... And look, if you guys think they're talking too fast, you can also read the subtitles. There are subtitles, although for some reason
the only thing
like
I will say,
dark. What?
In the defense of these women is hopefully they at least recognize that the situation, this asymmetrical situation, it completely neutralizes feminism's assertion that society benefits men at the expense of basically everyone else. If society is one group of people that will be, if men are the one group of people that society will sacrifice to preserve everyone else, how can they be benefited by that society?
Mm-hmm.
How can they be the primary beneficiaries of that society? Think about it. Men are the one group that society will sacrifice in order to protect everyone else. Men 18 to 55. You have to go to protect everyone else. And yet they're the ones who are privileged by society?
Yeah.
No. That's wrong. It's like it's just wrong. It's wrong. Like there's no way to get around that argument.
Yeah, that should be ultimately the conclusion, is that like male privilege is a myth, doesn't exist. And this is also proof against the patriarchy. Not evidence, it's proof. Like if patriarchy was real, they'd be sending women to war. But no human like ethnic group, species, race, whatever would survive if they did that. That's why patriarchy is not real anywhere. And it probably wasn't anywhere in history either. So.
And incidentally, most wars are started over resources.
Yeah.
Like they're resource based. Like, and why? Because human offspring and human women are resource intensive.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's right.
If you got two human groups in conflict over a resource, they got to fight it out. Yep. And the group that wins monopolizes the resource. I had somebody say that nobody benefited from World War II. I'm like, the U.S. became the world reserve currency as a result of its involvement in World War II and the subsequent rebuilding. That actually is a huge benefit to the U.S. I mean, I'm not saying that West didn't benefit also, like all of the West, but that was a huge boon for the U.S.'s ability to to gain resources from other countries.
Yeah.
You know, and also expand its financial system, and that was a gain. That was a gain of resources. It was sort of a one-step removed gain of resources, but it was a gain. You know, and that was the cost of that.
Mm-hmm.
You go and you look at the sex ratios after World War II, and although I couldn't find one after World War I, it affected marriage patterns for decades. After World War II, and World War I had less, I'm pretty sure it had less involvement of civilians than World War II. World War II had more involvement of civilians. Okay.
Yeah.
Soviet, the Russia, like the main Russian area, 77 or 76 men for every 100 women after World War II.
Yep.
Germany was something like in the 80s, like 80 something men for every 100 women. The UK was in the 90s. Most of the European countries were like around 90, 95, 90 men per every 100 women as a direct result of the deaths of men in that war.
Yeah.
Think about that. They bore the cost. And no offense, but American women were the ones who really made out like bandits. Like bandits. From World War II. And then everybody's like, oh, but they were so oppressed in the 50s. Really? No, they weren't.
No.
Like, that was one of the most
If anything, everybody had it tough when it was tough.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing. Like war results in the ability of one social group to monopolize a resource for the benefit of its women. And usually the only cost, is a few men.
Yep.
Okay, so that's that. So your idea that war is something that somehow doesn't benefit women, that's bullshit. Women's pretty much the only thing benefited by war, which makes Hillary's statement that, women are the ones who lose most in war very ironic. Like, really, yeah, the 70, like in Russia, 77 men to every 100 women, but women were the ones who hurt most.
Of course.
Oh, God. Oh God. Okay, let's keep going.
All right, let's keep going.
Some of
So,
them, there was some
so
bad cases.
the part that I would disagree with would be putting women on the front lines. We are physically capable to do a lot. You know, there's different boundaries for women who go into the military, who have to do boot camp, than there are for men. We can work women as hard as they can, but they're not going to work as hard as men are.
I actually got accepted into the Air
All right, I'm gonna pause this here. As long as the military doesn't lower standards so that they can get more women, which I think is happening. They're doing it with firefighters. I saw your story that you put through. I'm gonna talk about it tomorrow. And other sort of demanding jobs, cops. You know, they're because these institutions are being, I think, coerced, if not straight up told or mandated to get more women in there so they can have like a more diverse firefighting force or police force or military. But because they're doing that, it harms them. It's not necessarily that women couldn't do their own part to contribute, but you have to accept the reality that, you know, like that other girl said, you're not going to be like just like a man, and maybe you shouldn't worry about that. That's just a reality, you know. And if we lower the standard, then it's just going to it's going to kill people. It's going to kill men primarily. Yeah. So.
Okay. I'm just going to remind you guys, send those comments.
Yeah, send us some super chats and super chows, please.
Come on.
Or please. You can do it on Rumble. I'm looking at Rumble.
Don't make us beg. Okay, feedthebadger.com/justthetip.
Okay.
But I will beg. No, maybe a little.
Okay. All right, let's keep going. It's still early in the month, so. All right.
I am freaking tired. I'm like, I don't know if you've noticed.
Yeah, no, I am too.
Yeah.
You can't tell.
God damn.
My eyes are red as fuck. Okay. Here we go.
Air Force, which would have been like very nice because I would have had a little desk job. But unfortunately, I was waiting for a job, so I went to Army. So I went through boot camp, and it was hell, and it really messed my back up even more than it already was. Our rationale skills and our logical thinking is not conducive to be able to be on the front grounds, to be able to make, oh my gosh, if I step here, this is going to blow up. Can I, like, we just think too emotionally.
Yeah.
What?
Those. I don't know. I just find her cleavage very distracting.
It is.
Props for the men, you know.
Erotic.
Props to the men for just like seeming to just no-sale that.
They're like working really hard to maintain eye contact. So
yes,
I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a booby trap right there.
Yeah, it is.
You just trip and it's like the La Brea tar pits. You're just going to sink right in. I said you just trip. It's like the La Brea tar pits. You're going to sink right in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like the line from Liar Liar. Your boobs are huge. Okay, so let's keep going.
And that's why when we talked about leadership, it's the same thing. Being in those positions where like split-second decision could make or break, I don't think women have it in them to do that. And I don't think it's fair to men to be, if I was a man, I wouldn't want to be next to a woman and want to be carried out if my life was depending on it.
I think it seems like a lot.
All right, I'm just pausing it there for the banana.
Oh, gosh.
What?
I'm just looking forward to what the feminist men will say to that.
Yeah, I want to know what they're going to say too, but let's see.
You see, the thing is that feminists, like, they have a real problem with just allowing that there are things that men do better than women.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that most of what that's used for is essentially men putting their lives on the line. So it's not like, you know, something they get to gloat about, like, haha, woman, I could lift this dumbbell and you can't, ha ha ha, you know. I have this like great long distance 20/20 vision. I can see distant targets. Haha, you can't do that, woman. But no, what happens is our society makes use of those advantages to put men in harm's way. So, you know, it's like, but of course, feminists they can't stand the idea that, like you said, men, you know, have any advantages over women. It's always women do everything just as well, if not better. Or they do everything just as well, and they do other things better. Like they're better parents. They're more empathetic. They're more supportive. They're more compassionate.
More cooperative.
And it's like, is it though? Are they though?
Yeah, but they're more of everything, but they're also simultaneously oppressed
Yeah.
by men who can't cooperate and yet share a telepathic link somehow. It's honestly, it's just as inane as, no offense, the Jewish conspiracy nonsense, because simultaneously Jewish people are powerful enough to have a connected network of Jewishness that rules everything.
Yeah.
But then also inferior. And also, I would add, up to this point, our society has been pretty cool. So if the Jewish people are responsible for our society, thank you. It's not been that bad. Now it's getting a little bit. You know what? It's materially, it's still not bad. I mean, we could still pull this out of the breach, I think. You know what I mean? Like, we really don't have a hell of a lot to complain about in terms of material issues. But that can definitely disappear if we don't correct certain foundational psychological issues that we're facing. All right, let's go back to Titty McQueen.
Okay, Titty McFitty.
And I don't think it's fair to men to be. If I was a man, I wouldn't want to be next to a woman and want to be carried out if my life was depending on it.
I think it seems like a lot of the same discussions keep happening with these prompts, which is back and forth of how much is it nature, how much is it nurture, how much are there like intrinsic biological differences between men and women, and how much does that dictate our behavior and our physiology, our biology, versus how much of that is through social learning. So
okay,
all right,
dude.
just pausing it there. Go
Please.
ahead.
Oh my God.
Could you nurture a woman to become like Captain America, super soldier? Could you do that? Could you just use nurture to change someone's like physiology?
You couldn't nurture a woman to be Black Widow, to be honest.
Yeah, you could. That's
ridiculous.
Exactly right.
And she's not supposed to have any superpowers. I'm like, and so like, no, you couldn't nurture. Like, well, I mean, look at this. The whole argument about trans women in women's sports obviously discredits this whole biology argument.
Mm-hmm.
And trans women aren't just physically stronger. I guarantee they're also more, they have quicker reflexes.
Yeah.
They're more physically daring.
Yep.
Probably. You know, they're more, can I say this? Like, they're most likely, if they've been raised with have male musculature, male hormones, the way they move is more compelling, if that makes sense. Like, it's like they know how to move their bodies better.
Yeah.
Men do. To achieve a goal.
Yeah. Also, in many cases, trans women who enter women's sports would not fare well in men's sports. So they're not even like the cream of the crop, right, of men, or at least compared to other men. Like, men who are athletes are operating at a level far beyond that. And it's not. It doesn't mean like that women can't play sports. Go ahead, have fun, but let's stop pretending that men's and women's like abilities are the same. Because that's kind of what this assumes. Like, oh, well, if you just raised your girl to be an athlete, no, that's not how it works. I mean, she could be an athlete, but she won't be like men, you know?
No. And it's just like, let men have that.
Yeah, let men have that. Exactly. We got female Olympians and volleyball players.
Gymnasts. You know, like, female sports are different, but they have their merits.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure everybody would love to see Miss Red Dress play volleyball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody mentioned that the pro women's soccer team, the Olympic one with Megan Rapinoe, who's basically like she's like a DLC skin for Rachel Maddow. She her team, despite demanding to be paid exactly the same as the male soccer teams, her team lost to a high school team of boys. That's how much the difference is. So, you know.
Mm-hmm. And it's ridiculous to continue the biology thing. I mean, there's certain aspects of the biological argument that are absurdist. For example, we are pair bonders, which tends to mean that men and women have a sense of a common purpose, which, I don't know if you noticed that male and female humans can do things like share a language, share a space. A lot of animals, male and female animals, outside of mating season, they encounter each other, someone's going to die. So we're actually pretty simpatico with each other. And I think there's a lot of exaggeration about the overall goals of men and women being so separate. I think that's wrong. Now, physically, there is significant differences, though.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely compatible, obviously, and complementary, but that doesn't mean we're the same. So.
Yeah. It doesn't mean they're the same.
No.
And it doesn't. And having the same goal, you can be very different and still work together and enjoy each other's company.
Yeah.
If you have something of the same goal. That's the idea behind nationalism. Okay.
I got a super chat. I got 2 super chats. So
yes, my begging worked. My exhausted begging.
Yeah, thank you. Ergo Proxy gives us $5 and says, "What if women needed to sign for a getting pregnant draft instead of a getting sent to war draft? Would fit what society needs of both sexes." Well, I think that's about the same. I consider that to be closer to equality.
Here's the thing. Not really.
Okay.
Because going to war is worse.
Yeah, it is still worse.
Getting pregnant.
But if women that if women were drafted to make babies, to replenish our resources, I guess, they would probably take war a lot more seriously. And so it would change like their attitude towards it, and maybe the CIA won't be able to manipulate them as well, because they'll be like, well, look, I don't want to become, a breeding, what would you even call that? Like a breeding sow or whatever? Like like a heifer?
I don't want to be called up. I don't want to be called up to be impregnated by the government.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really messed up. I'm not for that.
It does sound messed up, but consider this. But consider, we're okay with the getting sent to war part.
Yeah, I know.
Which is horrific.
It is.
Getting pregnant is a natural process. Getting blown up in a landmine is nobody's natural process. The horrific rates of death, discomfort, and they aren't comparable.
Yeah.
And yet we are okay with doing that to men. And suddenly it becomes horrifying to even suggest that women put a natural process that their body does to the service of society.
Yeah, and they don't risk as much.
It's okay. We can send boys off to get shot at, but no, this isn't acceptable. And it's like, how was that even? But the other thing is that if men were the ones who got pregnant, they would be drafted to get pregnant.
Yeah.
In war. The government wouldn't give a fuck about their bodily autonomy. Men are literally considered to be property of the government. That's what GI means. Government issue. Okay? So if a society is willing to kill men in order to preserve itself, it sure as hell is willing to rape them.
Yep.
And force them to gestate. I mean, men, not women, but yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So thank you for that super chow. And then Epicarp gives us $50. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you very much. That's really nice. Thank you.
And says, leftists often say how fascists believe that their enemy is both strong and weak. Yet that's exactly what feminists believe about men. Well, it's almost like critical consciousness is basically like a theme that throughout all that woke ideology. So, but I think that it's probably feminism that started it, and they're just using that as the base model to make other things. But yeah, it's not a coincidence. It's the same.
Yeah, it's a psychological failing, I think, more than it is an actual position. When you look at these positions like Nazism, feminism, I guess, some racist narratives.
Mm-hmm.
And the person is saying that their target group is simultaneously super intelligent and capable of doing all kinds of things, but at the same time utterly inferior. It is a psychological projection. I don't know what we could call it or look at it, but that is definitely a psychological projection, not really it shouldn't really be considered a political position. And the instant people do stuff like this, they are wrong.
Yeah.
This behavior never results in any kind of meaningful anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually see it with now being directed at white people as well, like simultaneously, completely, I don't know, worthless or useless, but also all powerful.
Right. Well, white supremacy is basically patriarchy, and I mean, like they use them interchangeably too. So
I think that's infantile thinking.
What?
It's infantile thinking.
It is.
It's infantile thinking because you're simultaneously ascribing power and malfeasance and uselessness, and it's almost like you're projecting something you hate about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I talk about feminists, like there's a behavior that they engage in, like they're talking in the same manner as this, but I recognize that they are using a particular power that women have over the social narrative, and they're actually exploiting women for it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think they're actually pretty good marketers, but that's what they are. They're marketers. They're very, very good at finding ways of making. Yeah, they're very good at finding ways to make narratives that make money and give them power. Okay. Anyway, and that is one of them. It just ties into some deep failing in human beings, I suppose. Let's go.
All right, let's go.
How much it's our culture in terms of,
Societal
let's say, like
programming
on a scale of 1 to 10, how high is your sex drive?
Very high. I'm a sex coach.
I'm not asking you.
Oh,
You
I thought you were. I like sex.
Why would this woman? She kind of makes me laugh.
Erotic.
I wasn't asking you.
Sorry.
If you ask everyone that,
Yeah.
You'll see on average differences between men and women. And because of that, I don't think we should dictate whether or not someone is drafted into the military. Because ultimately, I think individuals should have the freedom to make certain choices.
It's a draft, though.
Yeah, they're talking about the draft. I mean, ideally, there'd be no draft. But what that would mean is, I mean, it wouldn't change things that much, because if you can still manipulate women to vote in favor of a warmongering, war hawk style president or prime minister or king, or, well, you can't vote for king, but you know what I mean, like some powerful politician, then there might not be a draft, but men are going to be asked to volunteer and sign up, and they probably will. So you're going to get like a similar outcome. The only difference is, but so what has to happen is that there has to be an acknowledgement of the vote, especially, as not a right, because it isn't, but it is a responsibility. And people don't treat it like a responsibility.
Nope.
So like that, because what we don't want is to vote in favor of something that's going to get a bunch of people killed. And what we're hoping is that people will think about that in general, but they don't. They vote for what the politician promises them. And that might just end up leading to war. Or they'll vote for a president that's going, or a prime minister or whatever, that's going to, kill the bad misogynists over there and protect the women over there. And that's what's going to happen. Whether there's a draft or not, men are going to die. Because men will sign up. Like if there's no draft, they'll still go.
Yeah, well, because of the aforementioned habits, but also overlaid our instincts. Men just seem to be drawn to testing their courage
Yep.
against the ultimate dragon, which is war.
Yep.
But then again, you can also exploit that. Like,
Absolutely.
Women are drawn to have babies. It would be an exploitation to force them into it. Men are drawn to this kind of thing. It's an exploitation to force them into it. What I wanted to say is to talk a bit about the history of the vote and war. So prior to like all of these suffrage movements, and that includes like men's suffrage, nobody voted. Basically, if you had say in the government, it was because you were either clergy, or you were able to wield a sword, or you were able to give birth to people who could wield swords. That's it. And then you had a say. I mean, there were certain protections and limitations placed on the aristocracy, and their, like, for example, Game of Thrones is total bullshit. I'm sorry, Karen, if you're listening. It is not a realistic society at all, because you can't just kill the son of a tradesman and not have that be a big deal. And the reason why is because during all of these conflicts between noble houses, one of the most important military factions for a king was his yeomen. And his yeomen, guess what? They were drawn from small property holders and tradesmen. So you if you're a king and you piss off, you kill a butcher's son and you piss off your yeoman, you're not going to be king for very long. But interestingly enough, who are the first people who started to get the vote? Well, the aristocracy, of course, they couldn't get away from that. But yeomen, who fought in wars for the king. And then after that, you start seeing more and more enfranchisement of like former peasant classes, because you put a gun in a peasant's hands and suddenly they can take down a knight. So they're legitimate military. They are now legitimately militarily capable of defending their lands. Okay, so then you start seeing the enfranchisement of more and more men, because more and more men can actually be called upon to defend the land, to defend their nation, to defend their society. One of my points is, and it's also this sort of feedback loop, because when somebody can pick up a gun and shoot a king, there's a lot more pressure to give that guy a sense that he has a say in the course of the nation. You get what I'm going for here?
Yeah.
There was a huge psychic shift. The first time a aristocrat, I don't think it was a king, but a fairly high up aristocrat was shot at a distance and almost killed. Like that was a big watershed moment for people's thinking. Because before, if you wanted to take out a king, you had to do it probably with a knife or with a very unwieldy, like arabesque, I think an incredibly unwieldy firearm, which meant that you were most likely going to be caught. Now you could snipe one from the distance, and suddenly everybody's like, "Oh wait, well, any peasant can kill a king, huh? I think we need to start giving them a sense that they aren't disenfranchised."
Yeah.
And then we start seeing all of that. And so it not only is the vote throughout all of human history tied to the ability to defend the state, these franchise movements are also tied to they started with the military empowerment of individual men, of these men. First the yeomen, then the peasants, and the fact that they defended their nations, and also the fact that, if you're going to give a man, if once they become a threat, you better give them a sense of say in their culture. This might be something you want to consider today. Once they become a threat, you better give them a say or a sense that they have a say in the political process, or they just might start taking it out.
Yeah.
So it isn't like the vote isn't some magical thing that came from the feminism fairies. The vote came from war and force, and the fact that the individual person, the individual man, suddenly became himself the potential to be a soldier,
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's where it came from. You really honestly think the aristocrats were sitting around saying, they deserve... No. It was self-preservation.
Yeah.
Okay. All
All
right,
right.
let's keep going.
Let me just check and see. Okay, no other super chats, but thank you, or super chows. I read those. Thank you so much for the donations. All right. There's only a little left in this segment, so...
Yeah,
Sure,
they can go in if they want.
It's a
That's
draft,
the military.
and what you're saying, you don't think people should be treated differently because there can
Exactly.
be metrics
It's
that fall outside
differential
of the data.
treatment. That's
Of
what I'm
course,
getting
yeah,
at.
so there is differential treatment, but I would say that it's completely reasonable to do that because not only are we focusing on the differential treatment, but we're focusing on outcome. So if I'm expecting somebody to go in combat, which is the reason I didn't walk forward, you should also expect that person on an individual basis to be able to meet the exact same standard as every other man that they are going to be fighting with.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why she stood by,
mean,
because again, like I said, it's going to... I mean, you have to treat this with very cautiously, because one little slip up and a whole squad dies. So you have to make sure that like everything is running like a well-oiled machine. And I'm not saying that women are the monkey wrench, but I'm saying that you can't just like willy-nilly just be, well, women and men are basically the same, let's just put them out there. So no, she's right. I mean, it's just reality. That's all it is. So I got a super chow.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's I think that really goes to just how you implement the solution to this.
Yeah.
But I think the blonde one was right. If you have a vote, you need to have something that you're giving to the state.
Yeah.
In exchange for that vote. You can't just get constant, like, it's a moral hazard. But
it is.
The ultimate point I wanted to make, just to conclude my little rant about firearms and peasants, it isn't just that the vote, men fought in war to get the vote. It's the fact that men fought in war that made the whole idea of the vote politically viable.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise they wouldn't, they weren't going to empower peasants if they didn't have firearms.
Of course, yeah.
Let's be honest. Okay.
All right, I got a super chat from Albert Nader Retro, gives us $5.50 Canadian, and says, who were the anti-feminists again? Because when I watched this myself, I couldn't find any. Shrug emoji. Well, to be fair, I think that Jubilee decides what the categories are called. So I think that if you ask these women, most of them probably wouldn't have called themselves that. So I don't know. That's just me. I think that Jubilee decides that stuff. Like when they did the men's rights activist versus feminist thing like a few years ago, and we did a whole response video because Christoph Petkoz was one of the MRAs. He was the only MRA in that group. There was an incel guy who may have like known some red pill stuff, and I had him on the show. His name is Brandio. And then there was like this Asian guy who was basically just like a traditionalist, So not MRAs, but that's how they labeled it. And for all we know, they didn't know they were going to be labeled that way until after the show came out. I seem to recall talking to Christoph about that and asking him. So yeah. So, anyway, that's all I wanted to say about that. So thank you for the super chat. Let's finish this off.
So the military has made a change on that, by the way.
Yes,
they
they
have a
have.
new individual test that's based on what jobs you can do. If you're doing more combat
Sure.
roles, yes, you have to be strong and tougher, and there are women meeting those standards. That's
Yes,
why
yes,
things
I
are
agree.
changing. And like I said, I'm not for the draft at all, really. I think it's
Agreed.
a really bad thing. But if
Yeah.
it was to happen, like it should be across all boards. Everybody gets treated equal.
If I could choose the possibility of women being drafted or not, I would choose that they're not. Well, I don't want my
anyone.
daughter to be drafted.
I think if you draft, at least account for the difference.
Oh, really? Well, what if you had a son? Would you want your son to be drafted? Allison, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
All right.
Yes. Okay. Could we go through that one again? Sorry, I fell asleep
You were
briefly.
distracted.
Yes,
I'll
I was
play this.
distracted.
Wait, what?
I was distracted by my exhaustion. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But if it was to happen, like it should be across all boards. Everybody gets treated equal.
If I could choose the possibility of women being drafted or not, I would choose that they're not. Well, I don't want my
anyone.
daughter to be drafted.
I think if you draft, at least account for the differences, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your son's okay. And that's the thing. Like, you're not unique. You realize this is the common sentiment throughout all of human history. And we look back at these cultures that were different than our own, because most cultures think that if a man isn't taking the risks for his woman, that he is doing something wrong, and terribly wrong. Okay?
Yep.
So if you go back to 1950s and you're like, oh, no, there were no women test pilots. In the 1950s, if men weren't taking the risks for women, they would have been considered that there was something seriously wrong with them. Morally, that they weren't men. Like, they didn't have the right to call themselves worthy of being human. Like, you take away when you say not a real man, you're essentially saying this man doesn't deserve to consider himself human. Okay? So they believed that men were 100% obligated to take the physical risks for women. And we look back at those cultures, and because they were like, yeah, but we're not going to let women be test pilots because men are obligated to take the physical risks, so eventually women can sit comfortably on airliners or go up into the orbit. You know, that's their attitude. You take one of them today, bring them today, and you'd be horrified at what men aren't doing for women today. Supposedly, they still are. I think that's where all the weak man rhetoric comes from a lot of circles. But it's like you can't. This sentiment, this idea is, I would rather sacrifice my son than my daughter. This is not new. This is a universal. This is from this, the deepest, darkest Sudan, to Norway, to Japan, to probably Alpha Centauri. People would rather see their sons suffer than die than their daughters. That's why their sons were allowed to go and suffer and die in order to benefit their families. Like, these people will not acknowledge the very things that they speak and say about constantly. Like, it's funny because sometimes I watch this woke shows, right? And I'm just watching. I'm not listening to what these people are saying. I'm watching how the actors respond.
Yeah.
Okay? There'll be like this big, tough, I don't need no man woman, right? And they'll have some scene with like a jump scare of some evil creature or something, right? Oh shit. My dog just came into the kitchen and I thought it was my husband on all fours.
Oh.
That's fucking weird.
That's like something out of In the Mouth of Madness, or
yeah, I was thinking about horror
2.
movies. Yes, I know. But thankfully it was my dog.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was just a really weird image because I was thinking of horror movies. So there'll be a jump scare. And I don't know if they can't possibly be doing it deliberately because they're trying to make some statement about female empowerment. But you will watch the man immediately protect the woman. And you're like, well, didn't you just discredit everything you're trying to set up by that one instinctual response? Like, you didn't notice that in post-production? And this is something that's continuous.
Yep.
We didn't invent this. Like, but this individual, this feminist who will say, well, I don't want my daughter to be tortured and killed. That's a son's job. Herp-a-derp. Will never take that sentiment, recognize that all of society has it and has always had it in history, and drop the women are oppressed bullshit. By what? Women are oppressed by being quote-unquote ruled by people who want the best for them. Who would rather send other men to die. That's patriarchy backfiring. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Ugh.
Feminism hurt.
In an actual scientific,
men too. Yeah.
If this was an actual scientific endeavor, that wouldn't be called patriarchy backfiring. It wouldn't be called patriarchy hurts men too. You know what that would be called? Counter evidence.
Yeah.
And one instance of it means you go back to the drawing board with your conjecture. But they never go back to the drawing board with their conjecture.
Yep.
Okay. I'm dead.
So that's the end of the clip. So, and we've gone for just a little over an hour. So I think that we can go. I can do my after show now, or patron show. Sorry. So let me just make sure. Oh, I did get a super rumble rant from NovaFan21, who gives $1 and says, "I wonder if the feminists will lobby for a draft, but only for men they label as problematic, such as incels." Well, that's all men. All men are problematic. There's no exceptional groups. It's all men. No doubt they'll think of it as, quote, a problem taking care of itself, end quote. Perhaps, but like I said, I don't think that incels are... They will draw attention to them as a particularly problematic group of people, but if you look at how they treat even male feminists, I mean, they believe this about all men. So that's why the setup as it is, they're totally getting what they want. They get to have a say or a voice in like elections and political power, and they risk nothing. There's nothing that comes with it. It's simply something they get. Whereas men, they get it under a condition, and that means that they should be very thoughtful in how they choose to proceed, politically. And then the feminists have us all believing that it's a right, not like something that God gave us or some equivalent thing. And that's why we're in the mess we're in.
It is sort of a right. It's not actually a right for women, because it's just something given to women by men. And it will have to be taken away if women, at some point implode society because of the moral hazard. And it isn't even a male or female thing. If you have one group of people who's able to write checks, another group of people has to cash, that's a moral hazard. And there was something I was going to say in addition to that. My tiredness is screwing me up.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So you were talking about this is going to be
like sending problematic men to war.
Oh yeah, and yeah. Well, how is listen to this. How is what feminists or even everybody says about the average incel different than what feminism says about the average man?
Yeah, there's no difference. They just that's what I'm saying. Incels are their, it's like their go-to to talk about things that they attribute to men in general. They use it like as evidence of the way men are. And of course they're lying about incels too.
Okay, and I mean, and they consider men to feel like they're entitled to women's bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They see men as being hateful towards women or harboring secret hateful sentiments, and they see men. This is a big one that I've been arguing. They see men as using violence as a means to maintain the system. Violence against women. And of course, I had a whole bunch of feminists who swarmed my Twitter when I said, if men use violence against the system, violence against women to maintain the system, why did they make it illegal? And they swarmed my Twitter, and they were astounded by what I said. And I'm like, it's like saying capitalism would make money illegal. Yeah. My dears, you are saying that this is a foundational pillar of our society. You are saying that they use it to maintain the societal structure. That means it functions. Violence against women functions the same way a currency would, or a set of laws, or mores. Okay? It would be absolutely critical to that society existing day to day. Okay, if it maintains the structure of society. I think that what you are doing when you assert things like this is you are putting a whole bunch of buzzwords together with emotionally laden concepts in order to manipulate people into doing your bidding. Okay? And that when you actually deconstruct them, they make no goddamn sense whatsoever. Because that doesn't make any sense. You are literally saying that a society like capitalism, a capitalist society would make money illegal. Or a communist society would make sharing illegal. Probably did, though.
Yeah.
Oh, no, a communist society would make party propaganda illegal. Could you just imagine that? It's just like, yeah, this Pravda is now illegal. But how do we maintain ourselves? Well, I don't know. It's not my problem. Like that's what you're arguing when you say that patriarchy uses violence against women to maintain itself. Structure. Well, do you think that if we live in a patriarchy, all of the stuff that happens in a patriarchy isn't maintained by violence against women? You know what I mean? Like the roads?
Yeah.
Somehow we need some violence. There's a pothole. Better hit Phyllis. Gotta get that filled. There's been an earthquake. better kidnap some sex slaves. This is what you're asserting. And to use the analogy here, you have a pothole in a capitalist society, you need to bring together some amount of money to fix it. That's what it means to be a pillar of a society, to be essential to its structure. Okay? I don't see how you gotta really think about this, because I know a lot of people are gonna be, what? I don't see how you use violence against women to fix a pothole. I'm not seeing it, feminists. I'm just not. All right.
It's probably, there's like a long-winded explanation, but yeah. All right, well,
no,
that's
isn't.
all.
I don't even think they need to do it. I mean, yeah. I want to see that. I want to see the nuanced gymnastics to justify that shit. I want to see it. I would pay money for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
so
why it is in a patriarchy that uses violence against women as a structural element, why it is that they can't use that to fix a pothole. All right.
Good question. All right, so that's it. That's all the super chows, super chats, and rumble rants, and we're done with the segment. So take us out,
a little bit longer than an hour. So
well.
All right.
So
if you would like to send us a message after the show, and we will endeavor to read it out on the next show and respond to it, please do so at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. If you enjoy this show and you want to see more of it, give us a tip. It's very helpful for us to continue to do this. Yep. And to know that our content is still appreciated, because I'm pretty sure YouTube doesn't appreciate it. The jury's out on Twitter. Elon seems to be increasingly jaded, perhaps, with this society.
Well, I sent in, so I've been kicked off of Twitter since probably 2019, I think. 2018, something like that. And every time I tried to get my account reinstated, they just told me that there's an error or we can't help you or whatever. But I tried again today, and I got an email from Musk, from Twitter, saying that they're going to get back to me in 5 days. So I might get back on Twitter, which is kind of exciting. So I haven't been on for a long time, but see what it's like.
Someone was saying that the left and woke crowd on Twitter are like those really fat, flightless birds on some island with no natural predators.
Emus?
And then no, not emus. Emus are vicious. Dodo
Turkeys?
birds. That was it.
No,
Dodo birds.
Okay.
Birds. Yeah. And then they reintroduced the stoats into the ecosystem, and the cats and stoats.
Oh.
And it's just a feeding frenzy on Twitter now.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope I get back on, because I think Twitter's going places. I think of all of the social media places under Musk's management, I think that Twitter is gonna grow. Apparently he's been working with Tucker Carlson on something, or they've been together taking pictures and shit. So I bet something's coming, and it's gonna be on Twitter probably. So anyway,
well, that would be interesting.
Yeah,
but
it'd
I'm
be
just
interesting.
saying it's been sort of a bloodbath, because they don't have to actually construct arguments that make any goddamn sense.
Right.
So,
well,
there you go.
Yeah. I mean, what got Tucker in trouble was the fact that he wasn't towing the line at Fox, so he was doing his own thing to some degree. But anyway,
he was an independent thinker, I was when I was a little wee thing.
He was even kind of hard on himself, like his past self. I saw a video where he was talking about like what he used to believe and how it's changed. So definitely not a robot. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
we gotta go. So
feedthebadger.com/just a tip. You want to make sure that this content keeps coming and give us a tip. Tell us we're not just spinning into the wind. And yeah, back to you, Brian.
All right. So if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today. If you want to watch the full video that we were responding to, it's in the description. And please, please, please share this video because sharing is caring.
That's the joke.
Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Maintaining Frame, and we will talk to you all in the next video.
Right, activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.